We're not going to sugarcoat things in this guide. After going through a ton of low elo gameplay over the years, we can almost definitely say that supports are by far the worst of all 5 roles when it comes to teamfighting. The problem is that the impact that supports have in teamfights can often be much more subtle relative to other roles. Unless you're getting a crazy engage off as a melee support, teamfights are often decided by the more obviously flashy plays or mistakes from your teammates. When your ADC gets caught out, it's a really obvious mistake, so marksmen are always incredibly careful about their positioning, and every mage is always looking for the crazy 5-man ult that one-shots the entire enemy team. Meanwhile, as a support, you're just casually throwing a shield here or there, or maybe nonchalantly peeling your teammate while they do all the hard, flashy work, and that's probably what holds so many support players back. Just because your influence in a fight isn't as obvious, or maybe even quite as important as other roles, doesn't mean that you shouldn't care about it. The things that we have to watch low elo supports do regularly is ridiculous. In this guide, we're going to cover some of the most common mistakes that we see from supports and show you just how impactful your role can actually be when played correctly, so let's get right into it. Alright, by far one of the biggest issues that we see from support players is how little effort they put into timing their helpful abilities for their teammates. Be honest if this is you. Do you just press your shields on your most useful ally and then hope that they do something with it before it runs out? Chances are that's precisely what you're doing in your own games. Let's show you just how awful this actually looks when you pay attention to how most low elo supports play. As this Morgana is approaching this teamfight, she manages to land a great binding onto the enemy Jhin, which is a great start to the fight. This prompts her Yone to go in as well, and then Morgana responds by black shielding him. Why? Shields like these are obviously dumb, but way too common, especially in the lower elo brackets. What we believe is happening is that players immediately press their spells so that they can deflect all blame from themselves if things go wrong, or maybe they're just bored. If you immediately put all your useful spells on cooldown, then you can't really blame yourself if things go wrong afterwards, right? There's nothing else that you could have done, and it's your teammates who used your buffs incorrectly. Now, that's obviously a problem because you're taking away all your own agency in the game. As the fight continues, Yone is completely fine because he never needed the black shield, but pay attention to the top side of the fight. Aurelia is being chased down by Hecarim and dies being chased down by his ultimate. If Morgana still had her black shield up, she could have easily walked closer to her teammate and shielded her, which would negate Hecarim's fear and easily save her life. We all know how BS Aurelia is, and especially with this double lifesteal build she's got going on, if Morgana was good, she would have been able to save her life by just enabling Aurelia to keep auto-attacking. And here's the problem that we mentioned at the start of the guide. Morgana won the fight, and her influence over how things went was very subtle. She played the rest of it alright, so it's doubtful she ever even considers just how big of a mistake she actually made. So let's take a look at a fight where things actually mattered this time. We're going to let this play out first. Pay attention and see if you can spot how often Lulu mistimes, specifically her E and W. After you've watched it, we'll break things down so you can see just how awful this teamfight really was by her. Okay, so before the fight began, Lulu was actually getting some good vision control down, which made the fight much easier for her team. But none of that mattered because all of her other misplays take away any good credit we could actually give her. As she regroups with her team at Dragon, we see her first mistake. She autopilot presses E on her ADC, who is not in danger of taking any damage, and doesn't save it for her Diana, who is tanking Dragon. So Diana ends up taking significantly more damage than she should have, and is nearly dead instantly in the fight. While Diana is being focused down, Lulu once again autopilot shields her ADC as Vayne tumbles forward. This is a real panic moment because we haven't even seen who Vayne is focusing yet. Not only was her shield bad, but her W makes no sense. This is another example of a support instantly putting their buff on their allies, so they don't have to time things correctly. It's especially an issue on Lulu, whose abilities do different things based on the target they're cast on. If she had more confidence in herself, she could have W'd Vayne as she came out of stealth and instantly killed her with Jinx. Unfortunately, both of Lulu's buffs expire before Jinx is able to actually do anything, so when she does decide to go in, she's immediately forced out of the fight and Lulu has to flash away. Now that they're both out of range of any danger, Lulu presses her E and W again to do nothing. Again, the shield ended up expiring before it blocked any damage. Thankfully, enchanters are so easy to be influential on that the few things Lulu did do right in this fight managed to help her team barely clutch out the fight. That's definitely the main takeaway that we want you to get here. It's so easy to be useful on a buff-based support, even if you don't do things well, that players rarely go back and criticize themselves for how poorly they played teamfights out. But it's clear to see just how much more impact you can have when you're trying to actually press your abilities properly rather than just autopilot pressing them instantly. Let's just compare what you just witnessed to how a challenger support plays teamfights. At the start of the fight, Miss Morgana's Yone is going deep into the enemy team and we see no black shield just yet. Obviously there's no reason to press it yet since Yone is only around a Poppy and Xin Zhao. As the fight progresses, Morgana finds the enemy Akali and begins to try to CC her, still no black shield. Finally, she realizes that Akali is about to go in on her Caitlyn, so she finally commits her shield and uses Zhonya to keep herself safe. This was a really well played fight from her, which enabled her team to go even despite being down a Chemtech Soul, which at this point in time is extremely broken. But more importantly, it highlights the subtle differences between a high and low elo support during teamfights. Now, this problem isn't just an issue for enchanter players. Melee supports suffer from the same thing, just slightly different. The issue with supports that have CC is that they throw their abilities out just to throw them out, even if the CC is irrelevant. As Leona and friends take the Baron, a fight begins. The enemy Tahm Kench jumps into Leona's entire team, and this is where the problem starts. She begins by Qing him, which is fine, but then as he's feared, she even commits her E onto him. Again, why? Even if he wasn't feared, why would a 0.5 second root matter at all here? Where is this Kench going that Leona feels so pressured to cast her E on him? Moments later, her E being on CD is a big problem since the enemy Viego, who happens to be the most fed member on the enemy team, is vulnerable to her follow-up. But as we just saw, her E is down to pointlessly CC the Kench, so she misses the opportunity. Not only does she fail at that, but she doesn't even use her ultimate onto the stationary Malzahar, killing her Yasuo. Thankfully, none of that ended up mattering as her Samira cleans up the fight all on her own. Like before, if played normally, this wouldn't seem so bad from Leona's end. She threw out some CC here and there and frontlined for her team to deal damage. But when you really break things down, you can see just how many ridiculous plays supports make in teamfights. Here's another example. This Pyke and his team are setting up for a fight in the jungle. As the engage breaks out and things are getting chaotic, Pyke sees the enemy team all safe under their tower and tries to hook one of them, for absolutely zero reason. His team is all focusing Mordekaiser, who is ridiculously out of position. There is no reason to hook anyone else at this time while his team kills the enemy frontline. After that, he looks to stun the Mordekaiser again for no reason. He's already stuck. This 1 second stun isn't going to change the outcome of whether Mordekaiser dies or not. If anything, he just let himself be hit for free and gave Kai'Sa a free kill. And don't even pull the he baited Kai'Sa card. She baited herself after killing him by face tanking Jhin and Malphite when she didn't need to. So let's make something super clear. Just because you can hit an ability doesn't make it useful. Putting your powerful CC spells on cooldown just because you can hit a target doesn't mean you're getting max value out of them. In this Pyke's case, he would have definitely been more useful by literally doing nothing. He should just hold his Q and E in case the enemy backline overextends and wait while his team kills Mordekaiser. And that example is a perfect transition into another major issue that supports struggle with. You need to stop engaging if your team can't follow up on the target you're CCing. Let's watch what this low elo Nautilus does. To start this team fight off, he goes for a flash hook on the Vayne but misses. That's fine. This is actually a good play, so don't feel bad when you miss stuff like this. What comes next is the problem. When that fails, he clearly tilts and commits his ult onto Vayne. Remember that Nautilus ult takes a moment to reach your opponent and most of his team is way too far away to capitalize. While the ult was traveling, Vayne's team was already on the move to save their teammate. Tunnel visioning this hard just ends up getting Nautilus killed, and this team fight was super close at the end of it all. If he had played this fight remotely well and saved his ult for when his teammates were nearby, then they'd have surely won it. We do want to clarify that we're not looking at just lower elo brackets like silver or gold for a lot of these criticisms. Most of the players that we're watching here are platinum or even diamond level supports, and yet the things we see sometimes are ridiculous. This Alistar in particular was so desperate to make a highlight play that he walked into the enemy base trying to make a massive loop to flank the enemy Syndra. As he does that, the enemy team realizes that the enemy support can't peel his own teammates, and so they just engage onto Alistar's carries and kill them instantly. Guys, please stop trying to be Core JJ in your games. You cannot go for the fancy highlight plays unless you've mastered the basics first. This was depressing to watch. We can literally make a montage from the ridiculous plays that we see daily from supports tunnel visioned on enemy carries with their teammates nowhere to be found. You need to pay attention to where your own teammates are and if your CC even matters. Who cares if you maybe land a 5-man knockup or whatever if no one is around to do anything off of it. So it's fair to say we've been pretty critical in this guide, but hopefully you can see why. Just because support is usually the least impactful role in teamfights doesn't mean that it isn't still super relevant. Imagine how much higher your win rate can go if you're the one who actively tries to improve and plays teamfights well, when you're playing against a bunch of autopilot supports who don't know how to press their abilities. It'll be a support diff every single game.
So you might be asking yourself, why go to SkillCapped.com to improve when I could just watch YouTube guides or play the game? Well, let me show you. Let's say you're a support who's struggling to climb the ladder. Not only would you get over 40 site exclusive courses for support, but maybe really what you've been struggling with is trading as support. Well, we got you covered with 6 different courses breaking down how to trade as a support player. Not only do we have the largest catalog of guides for League of Legends in the entire world with over 1,500 videos to watch, but these are then curated by the top coaches and players into courses on every skill and topic you need to master in order to truly improve and climb the ladder. If all of this wasn't enough, we haven't even touched on our catalog of over 700 Smurf commentaries, where a challenger expert shows you how to climb out of your rank and you're guaranteed to get any questions answered by them directly. Not to mention, we're the only service to offer a rank improvement guarantee. If you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a refund, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Head to SkillCapped.com and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below.
Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.